Town of Lakeview Planning Commission to order at 6:30 p.m. Okay. So, a public hearing on a quasi-judicial land use application is scheduled for tonight. Oregon law requires that I make several announcements for this hearing. A staff report has been prepared for the applications, and the staff report was available 7 days prior to tonight's hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to the applicant's proposed development and analyzes those criteria. A copy of the rules of the proceedings for the hearing, the agenda for tonight's hearing, and copies of the staff report are available at the entrance at the back of the room. All those in attendance are asked to sign the attendance sheet. Please include your address and please silence your cell phones. The testimony and evidence from all concerned shall be specific to the applicable criteria and standards. Testimony also should not be repetitious. Please do not repeat testimony offered by yourself or by earlier witnesses. Also, please refrain from demonstrations such as applause, cheering, or other disruptions which are prohibited. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence and testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the council makes a decision you disagree with, any issue you want to raise on appeal has to have been raised for the council's consideration. Failure to have raised an issue on the record with sufficient specificity and accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to have afforded the council and the parties to this proceedings to respond to that issue will preclude appeal on that issue to the Land Use Board of Appeals. Persons who are present and to support the application. All right. Page missing out of my procedures. The applicant gets to go first. Those in here to speak in support will be heard. Questions can be directed to the applicant and to those in support. Those who are here in opposition to the applicant will be heard. Questions to those in opposition can be heard. All right. Members, the applicant is given a final rebuttal afterward. At that time, the applicant is given the final rebuttal, at which time the public hearing will be closed. Members of the commission and the town attorney may direct questions to the applicant or opponents to assist in arriving at a decision. The commission will make its decision or continue its deliberation to another time and place. Before we go to the agenda items, is there any public comment on non-agenda items? This time is first. Right. This is the time for comment on items not appearing on the agenda. If you speak to agenda items during public comment, that cannot be entered into record. Are there any public comments for non-agenda items? All right, hearing none. Okay, first item of business, quasi-judicial public hearing on a proposed conditional use permit and Class C variance, Plan South 771. Outback Assembly of God Church is in the process of being resited. The church desires to construct new entryways into the building on the east and south facades. The existing entryways encroach on the required setbacks, and the new replacement entries will encroach to a slightly greater extent. All right. Do we have agents for Outback Assembly here?
Yes.
All right.
Also represented by, I'm the pastor.
All right.
Do you want staff report?
Oh, right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Let's go with staff report first. Go ahead, Jay.
Chair Batty, members of the commission, I have a brief staff report on this application. For the record, the criteria for the application that staff has identified are set out in the staff report that was provided in the packet 7 days before the hearing. I did notice one annoying typo that I would like to correct, which is the subsection of the property was identified as %1 BB, and it should be 15, or it was 1%. It should be 15 BB. Apparently, I hit the shift button before I typed the number 5, which results in the percent signal. So please correct that. Other than that, kind of the background here was the applicant initially submitted an application for variance only. So the commission knows there's a circuitous route in the code to deal with procedurally to deal with non-conforming developments that are proposed to be altered, and that's so you have to the non-conforming use section says you need to file a conditional use permit. Then you get to the conditional use permit, and then it says if you're making it any more non-conforming, then you also have to meet the variance criteria. Applicant communicated, or staff communicated with the applicant, let them know that they needed to also file the concurrent CUP. The applicant's agent was prompt in their response and got us added the CUP to the application. And then the other issue that arose was just there was a little bit. The drawings on J Street were a little bit unclear in terms of exactly, especially where the roof overhang would be in relation to the right-of-way. So we got some revised drawings that address that issue that assures that no part of the structure would actually encroach into the right-of-way. The other question that staff had for the applicant was just to verify that there were no public utility easements that would be impacted by approving the entryways as proposed, and the applicant's agent provided evidence, their statement, that there would not be any. So with that, there really aren't a lot of other issues with this application. Staff found all of the applicable criteria can be satisfied, and with that, staff recommends the application for the entryways be approved, subject to the condition that just requires the entryways be constructed per the revised drawings dated, I think, September 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to present the case for why we should grant this?
The church wanted some drop-off areas and some entries for dropping off some of their congregation and other users of the church. I wanted that covered up, covered walkways, so extending those out required a variance, as Jay said, to get those structures built. We do have the plan up on the screen if you'd like to see it, or if it was clear enough in your packet.
They won't extend to the sidewalks, right? I went by there and looked to see what they've already started, but
Correct.
Okay, sorry. Which one is it that you want up there?
I'm sorry. Can't read it real well. Go down. Outback Church site plan, 100 from the bottom. That one right there. That's the next
I know.
agenda.
But I keep clicking on it and it won't. There we go. Can you see it, Jay?
Anyway, the church is located in the southwest
No, but I can't.
Okay.
corner of the lot, extending the walkways, approach covers out on the east side, to the east side entry of the church and the front on Center Street. You see at the bottom of the drawing. So it reduces the setback on those two structures to the property line.
So I can't read either the shrunk down version of what I assume it was a decent sized sheet to begin with.
Do you want me to zoom this in for you?
Well, yeah, I assume you all probably got the answer, but is this going to in any way impede pedestrian access on the sidewalk? Still give the unimpeded space needed for ADA?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay,
It'll be ADA compliant.
all right.
Staff can answer that as well with the changes to the entryway that they made in the revised drawings. No part, including the roof overhang, would be in the right of way, and the sidewalk is 100% in the right of way, so it would not impede sidewalk travel at all.
All right, thank you. All right. Anything else you want us to know from your perspective, Darrell?
If there's any other questions, if the church wants to add anything?
Basically, the point was the old coverings were too shallow, and so we wanted to improve access for handicap and ADA situations. We've already replaced the east door with an ADA compliant motorized door, and so we've done a lot of work that way. This is kind of the last step, and the goal is to be able to, in inclement weather especially, to be able to open the door for people and have them under something. And, the old coverings were not deep enough. You had to basically stand outside in the weather while the doors were being opened. So this will allow us to have a little bit better, a better situation for our guests.
All right. We have anybody in the audience here to speak in favor of the proposal?
I support it.
Okay, if you could state your name and address for the record, please.
Ruth Corwin. My address 11839 Highway 395 Lakeview.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else here in support of the application? Okay, are there any here that wish to provide evidence in opposition? Okay. My commission members have any questions?
I have a housekeeping matter for Daryl. Daryl, can you confirm that what was on the overhead was the plans from 9-2?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
the ones I have in my seat.
Those are, this is just for record clarification, those are already in the record, so they do not need to be added into the record. But when stuff gets put up on the overhead, just so the commission knows, that's not in the record, then we will need to take action to add it to the record.
Have we received any mail or other communication from public?
No, not on this.
Okay, do you have
Nothing.
anything from a lawyer?
Nope, nothing.
All right. Okay. If my commissioners have no further questions, I think we close the hearing and proceed with deliberations.
No.
Okay, hearing is closed. Well.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, like I generally don't like to make a variance even worse than it was to start with, but I see the rationale behind this. I don't see any actual detriment to the community. Nobody's got other comments or questions? I'm ready to entertain a motion.
Somebody make the motion.
Motion to be passed. The request.
You moved to approve planning file 771.
Yes.
All right. Do I have a second? Okay,
second it.
thank you. Okay, it's been moved to second that we, pardon.
Clarification, was that motion, per the staff report with the recommended conditional approval?
I didn't understand.
So you need to state that with the staff report being, with the corrections of the staff report.
With the,
For the condition of approval,
say again?
consistent with the condition of approval recommended by staff,
Okay.
just the approval to the plans.
Yeah, I recommend passing planning file 771 with the changes that have been made in the staff report. Is that close enough?
Yes.
All right. Eric, you still stand by your second? All right. And as Jay informed us last time, we should be doing this by roll call rather than voice vote. So Don, if you call roll.
Dennis Mooney,
Yeah.
Greg McCauley,
Yeah.
Jake Campbell.
Yeah.
Tom Batty.
Aye.
Bonnie Lena. Yes. Kevin Sims.
Yes.
Yay.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Tom Knowles.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
All right. 771 passes. Thank you, Daryl. Pastor.
We don't want to find any
No, no, no.
inch over that sidewalk.
All right. That stack of papers out of the way and move on to the next one. And folks who are here specifically for the church, you're welcome to stay for the rest of the proceedings if you would like. They're kind of interesting if you're inclined that way, but you're not required to.
Bye, Joel, thank you.
Bye, thank you.
All right, now we shall proceed to application number 772. Applicant submitted a commercial site plan review for a phased development. Phase 1 will also construct new commercial goods retail store of approximately 10,500 square feet on tax lots 1,900, 2,000, and 2,100 with required parking and landscaping. Phase 1 will make parking lot and landscape improvements only on tax lot 3,100 to serve for a future phase 2 building. The subject property is identified as tax lots 1,900, 2,000, 2,100, and 3,100 in Township 39 South, Range 20 East, and Section 15 BA on the Assessors Maps, Lake County. All right. Staff report?
Hold on, you're muted. There we go.
Did you want to ask for conflicts of interest? I don't think we did that for this one.
Yeah, probably should have. I'm sorry, I forgot that.
Yeah,
Do I have any conflicts of interest on my commission?
I was gonna ask that 2 weeks ago, whenever we looked at the car wash. The people that have a conflict of interest with, they want more business as opposed to residential. What do we do about that?
that's not part of this proceeding, but we can talk about that offline, Rod.
Okay,
But it's, so that's better. You can call me at the office and we can have that conversation.
you understand
But
why?
as it pertains to tonight, it would be someone, a conflict of interest would be a commissioner who, or their family essentially that could stand to financially benefit from the action, or if they're related to a neighbor that is opposed to the action, then those would be potential conflicts of interest that would need to be disclosed.
Two different conflicts, I got it.
Any conflict of interest as Jay has explained it? Okay. Any ex parte contact? Has any of my commissioners spoken to representatives of the applicant outside of this hearing on matters regarding this? All right.
Very well. So this matter, as the chair mentioned, is commercial site plan review for a retail building and in the first phase, and then basically an area for a second development phase that, you know, will happen at some point in the future. Staff went through the criteria and standards. The applicant provided a pretty good and thorough application, and the application met most all the standards. There were a few issues that staff identified that were pretty minor that could just be addressed through conditions of approval. And so the staff report does have a series of conditions of approval in it that we would recommend. There are a number of things that I think to assure compliance with city standards, those conditions of approval are you know, recommended by staff. The only other thing, and I gotta give Don some props here, Don went and did a site visit and did point out sort of the overall street radius relative to the entrances to the project for semis, because it's definitely designed to handle some semi-loading. And it's kind of, I went back and looked at it. I mean, when I wrote the staff report initially, I mean, I just went through all the standards and the standards were met. That said, the sort of the way the code is written sort of contemplates that, you know, that commercially zoned land adjacent that's taking access from the city street, sort of the presumption in the code is that the city street is more than adequate in width for commercial vehicles to get in and out. That said, I think Don is right. It will be pretty tight if there is on-street parking. I don't foresee an issue if there aren't cars parked on street, but if there are, it does look tight to me. But I went back and looked at the criteria and standards, and for commercial site development plan review, there really wasn't any criteria that sort of necessarily spoke to that issue, except for kind of a general safety and operation issue, or it's, you know, more of a statement than it is necessarily a specific criteria. So I do think that's something that, you know, I don't know if that's going to come up with testimony tonight or how the applicant wants to address that, but it definitely is something that I do think is, I mean, I think semis can do it, but boy, you know, if there's parking on both sides, it looks tight to get on and off G and H Street. So I would just sort of raise that issue for the commission. And aside from that issue, it looks like a pretty straightforward commercial site plan review. All the criteria and standards were met with, or can be met with, conditions of approval staff recommends. And then the only other thing, we did get some public comment today. Don, did we just get the one piece?
Yes, that's all I received. I had a phone call, but it was an anonymous call the other day.
Yeah, well, we don't enter anonymous calls into the record, so
That
people
was
need
it.
to identify themselves. So we did receive one piece of comment, and has that been distributed to the commission?
Yes, sir.
And so really that's, I mean, it's talking about essentially whether or not there would be a fence and whether or not there would be a gate in the fence for them to have access. I'm not aware that they have an easement over the applicant's property that would allow them to use such a gate if it were constructed. That's kind of one of those things that I, you know, based upon what I know from a standard standpoint, there certainly isn't anything in the code that would require that. this seems like one of those, instances where, if the applicant is able to accommodate, the neighbor's request, it's probably a civil matter and it's between them. And I would encourage them to do that because it's usually good when you're building a project to have a good relationship with your neighbors. But I don't really see anything in the city's code that would require or that would provide a basis to, require a gate in the fencing to the north. I do believe the site plan showed some security fencing, I think, on the north side.
And Jay, also for the record, I just also want to let you know that this was also a conversation that I had with our project manager, Scott Langham, who was also in the audience tonight, and we had discussed the tightness of the streets of G&H. So he was in on that conversation as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, the staff does recommend approval, but I do think perhaps a conversation about the street width and turning radius in and out is worth having. Again, I'm not sure how it could be tied to any criteria, and I don't know if the applicant may want to speak to whether or not whether they've done the semi-truck turning radiuses and whether they were contemplating that then they would be coming back to the council and asking for some no parking signs or what have you. So I just don't, I'll be curious to hear what they have to say about that. And maybe they've done it and they're like, yeah, we can fit, it's not a problem. So. Staff doesn't have anything further. If the commission has questions of staff, I'm happy to answer them.
I'm sure we will before this is done.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, would like to speak, or agent? I assume you're agent for this one, too,
Yeah.
so.
Thank you here this evening. Randy Coakley, the developer, came all the way from Chicago. So, no small trip for that. So, yeah, to go over it real quickly, I do have some things we can put on the screen if you want to look at them.
You want me to do share screen with you? Jay?
Yes, if you can.
I'm working on that.
This conference will now be recorded.
Sorry.
Technology.
While she's doing that, this development is proposed on the vacant lot, just just north of the Lakeview Lodge Motel. Everyone's familiar with that. That's vacant property. Family Dollar proposes to build a retail store there with parking connections between G and H Street. Public facilities are in place, power, sewer, water, communications, parking lot spaces, whatnot are outlined on the site plan. Replacing sidewalks, curbs on G and H. There was a traffic study that was incorporated into the plan. You saw that. We are recommending a right-hand turn for people leaving the site on G Street. So they don't end up down 14395 intersection. So I do have some photos of the site there if we want to look at them, or everyone's pretty familiar with the site.
Yeah, let's go ahead and bring them up so everybody can see them.
Do you want me to go down the line?
Sure.
If you turn left coming out of there, you'd have to turn right at the corner anyway.
Can you see
You run
this,
into
Jay?
140.
Yes, I can see it.
Thanks. Can everybody see this?
okay, one shot at the site. This has been vacant for some time. I looked at some old area photos, it's been vacant for several decades. Okay, kind of looking northwest, off of G Street. Looking a little to the southeast behind the Lakeview Lodge Hotel. Existing fence there.
Can you move the back?
I'm just wondering where the house is concerned about gate.
I can figure that out.
Go
The
back.
first one where the old truck was. Be to the left of that truck.
Yeah.
To the north.
Okay.
It's looking south along G, the Lakeview Lodge entrance. Again to the southwest. Almost west. There's a couple of trees on site. Okay. The site plan,
Which one do you want?
yeah,
That one?
that's it. Site plan submitted shows the storage layout kind of in the northeast corner. Access along G at H Street. As Mr. Harlan mentioned, we do have a truck turning radius on there. You can see that in the lower right-hand corner, turning off of G into the site. We made that approach wide enough to have a truck going in there. Utility connections are on the G Street side. There's more fall to this lot than appears when you drive by there. It falls off to the west and to the northwest fairly steeply. So we have a fence covering the north area in between those, separating those lots that are to the north of the site. Retaining wall located on the north of the building to pull back the amount of fill we have to make the building level. The lots on basically the west side, over on the left-hand side, is what would be the second phase development, whenever that's developed. First phase would be the store, the lots to the east, and the parking lot. So, site plan covers the requirements as laid out in the development code. We have enough landscaping, parking spaces, access. So I think it'll be a nice addition. So, the Family Dollar operations, whatnot, that's where I need to.
Sure. Would you like me just to give a brief overview, and then if you guys have any questions, ask them? Okay, my name's Randy Coakley. My address is 4043 North Ravenswood in Chicago. I was signed in with that address, so you have it. Family Dollars is a discount grocery store. Similar to Dollar General. I think this is a much nicer product. They required me to tell you guys that, I guess, but 8 full-time employees, all hired locally, plus seasonal part-time work. The project will take about 5 months to build. Call it 7 months if we catch weather. And I mean, any general questions or anything I can answer if it. You know, Daryl's the brains behind this, so if it's a site-specific question, he can answer it, but more global kind of stuff, I can help.
We have questions for that?
Excuse me?
No, that's
Alright. So, we have anybody in the audience here to speak in favor of the proposal? And name and address again, get this going.
Okay, Ruth Corwin. I have one question. It is gonna be Dollar Tree also?
Yes, it's a
Yeah,
it's a
combo,
combination,
okay.
yes, it is.
Just checking.
So,
I support it because I like shopping at Dollar Tree.
oh great, that's nice. So, a little background, Dollar Tree is the store where everything costs $1. Up until last week, now they're making some things $1.25 and $1.50. They bought Family Dollar about 6 years ago, so they've started doing a combination store, so you kind of get the best of both worlds, where they'll have, I think it's around 6,000 square feet is the traditional Family Dollar, but then there will be around 3,000 square feet of the Dollar Tree, where it's, you know, kind of the bargain hunting for $1 and $1.25 now items like that.
What happens to the Dollar Tree, the Dollar General? That's, they're not connected?
No, not at all.
I have a question.
Yes.
Where's the nearest Family Dollar, Dollar Tree 2-in-1 store? Do you know?
Probably Boardman. So I mean, it's a ways away. There's one that's gonna happen in Mead, in California, and I think those are probably the two closest. It's a relatively new concept, but it's proving to make everybody very happy.
Any other testimony in favor?
I don't, no, I haven't seen the correspondence you got concerning that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I gave that to you. My apologies.
I just reviewed the title report here. Well, there's no easements on the title report. I guess we'll take a look at that. See if we can call it. See if we can do, I see what they're doing.
Yeah.
Just wanting to access the backyard from the parking lot. Right?
They just wanna make sure that they have enough space to access.
Is that the lot off of H?
This one right here?
That one?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mhm. This one right here. Or not there,
Do we have anybody in the audience who's here to provide testimony in opposition to the proposal?
I have a general question.
All right, let's go.
Scott Langham, 126 South F Street. This is probably for Daryl. Hey, Daryl, when you guys do that fill on that property, have we looked at what that's gonna do for standing water on the adjoining properties? Here in West Haven.
Well, all the water is contained onto the, we don't run any water off the site onto adjoining landowners.
So it'll all come off onto the street.
It'll all come off.
Okay.
There's a retaining wall on the north side of the building and a little bit on the west side of the building until we catch it down to that hatched area.
And that shouldn't affect the draining of the other properties around it.
No.
Okay.
What's the requirements for handicap parking? Is it per parking space?
I don't have.
I think it's based on the building size, not the number of parking spaces.
Thank you.
But the architect who laid that out was considered that obviously, so it's meets the code.
Just was.
Yeah.
There are some elevations from the architectural drawings. I could go to one of those. Maybe up at the top.
So
Yeah,
right there.
Get bigger screen.
Better eyes.
The front's down at the lower right. Sides, rear.
This is the front of the store.
Yes, that's correct.
Where are we in the process? Is there opponent testimony, or is this rebuttal, or where are we?
We've had one testimony in favor, none opposed. This is basically rebuttal, additional information from the applicant.
Okay, if the chair would, please, I do have two quick questions for the applicant. One, just clarification. Daryl, does the applicant have any concerns with the staff recommended conditions of approval? Would be the first question. Then the one condition of approval kind of that I left hanging in the air surrounds storm drainage, and whether or not there would be any on-site detention or whether the planning commission wanted to impose any. The code kind of has some language about storm drainage being handled, but then there's the section that deals with storm drainage. It just says reserved and there's no specific standards. So I guess first question would be, does the applicant have any concern with the staff recommended conditions of approval that don't involve storm drainage? And then as it relates to storm drainage, do you have any specific comments about that?
I don't think the applicant has any concerns on the conditions of approval. The item on storm drainage, as you know, in the development code, the town has not adopted any formal storm drainage requirements. So we generally keep everything on site and get it to the streets. Constructing a retention basin or whatnot has generally not been required. There was one that's constructed.
Is the water going to H?
The water's going to H. We go back to that other one.
It's just when I looked, I didn't it was a long ways to the nearest permit.
Yeah, there isn't many on H.
Blocks or something.
Well, it's not quite that far, but it's a ways.
Not this one?
No.
Which one?
Looking west.
No, go up to the top.
Right there.
Down, right there.
So everything flows to H Street.
Everything flows to H. Scoot it up just a little bit. Wood, please, Don. There you go. Everything is flowing to H Street, except the roof runoff, which is piped to the gutter on G Street. There's no storm.
So it's not all going to H. I guess I didn't catch the roof drain.
No, that's in the back.
That helps, I think.
So that goes over to G. There isn't any storm drains on G or H. It runs down to the nearest inlet. You can see where the inlet is on G, H is down in the lower left of that drawing. Water is generally a problem in Lakeview every 15 years, should we say?
I know I've had to excuse myself from one of these meetings to go sandbag Mike already.
Yeah. That was 5 years ago?
Probably three.
Something
3
like
years
that.
ago.
So that's, anyway, that's the way it's playing right now. So if you have any questions or concerns, we can discuss it.
It doesn't seem a long ways to have to run down the street before it gets to a storm drain.
Yeah, I had a question. Do we not have storm drains on G or H?
No, they're picked up on 4th, and then they're picked up on 2nd. There's one inlet partially down on H.
In the parking lot itself, you have, drains and runoffs underneath the ground that goes towards the gutters
It's all sheeted.
on top.
Yeah,
just
That's
one
what I
spot.
was asking.
It would all be down the gutter of the street.
So, no bioswales or anything incorporated in your landscape plan? Right. Again, A size reductions of a D size shoot. It's like I'm not getting a lot of detail on this.
Yeah, we do have the landscaping noted here, but the landscape plan was one of the, to be supplied during construction, that was one of the suggested conditions of approval. So, if you wanna look at some of the drainage, we certainly can.
That just seems like a big sheet of asphalt, like water runoff on those few occasions we do get.
It gets really cold, and when it freezes and you got water running down the parking lot to 8th Street, then you're gonna have an issue with some, ice and just
Yeah.
prevent that.
Kinda like the Safeway parking lot.
Yes,
the
and
parking
to
lot
be honest with you, I
down.
fell in that parking lot many times.
You know, there isn't a storm drain there. So the only thing we can do is put it slightly in a swale or something. But the overflow would still have to get to the gutter at some point. If there was an overflow.
Is it better to have the runoff go directly to the gutter as opposed to through the parking lot? If you put a storm drain, you can run it to the gutter, right? It might be additional work, but
You know, the gutters, remember the gutters, only about that much. So, I guess it would be somewhat up to the developer. We could put something in that hatched area,
Are you talking right in here?
up a little bit more. Up. Now would you, right? A little more right. That area's got the dots on it. We could put something there. A swale or small detention pond. Or not a pond or a small catchment area there. And then, if that ever caused overflow, we'd have to go to the gutter on G.
Is that creating?
Where's can you point
See my
on
mouse?
that area?
Yeah, see it?
A minute.
My mouse is moving,
Yeah,
right there.
okay, just immediately to the west of the future building area,
Mhm.
is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
The site
when
drops
I
off.
looked at it, that was, if you were gonna do something, that would be the logical thing, and, I don't know, maybe the 5-year design storm, or something like that would be reasonable.
The site drops off pretty quickly, so from G Street over to H Street is a couple of feet.
Well, that's quite a bit.
It drops off pretty quickly.
So there wouldn't be standing water there, then it flows
No.
quickly.
or just it flows from G to H.
That's correct.
And I guess my real concern was it wasn't so much flooding your own parking lot, or it's gonna run down to H, is that going to cause problems for the other properties along H Street? And again, those rare, the 5-year, 15-year event.
No, I don't think there'd be that much runoff coming over there in a normal 15-year band. But it would overrun the street. It would get into the basins on H Street that are located, well, that one's located on the drawing. There's another set of basins up at 4th Street on the highway. So that's up on the public there. ODOT wouldn't fix it. You try it again. When they fix it.
Where do you want me to go now?
I don't know, it depends. You have anything? Yeah. Am I hearing you want to incorporate that?
Is what's designed here, does that meet code?
Right now.
Jay, does that meet code, what is designed here?
Well, that's what I spoke to at the beginning, and it's in the staff report, is that there aren't specifically adopted standards, but there are about exactly how storm drainage is supposed to be handled, like from a design standpoint, but there are generally applicable criteria that they have that sort of storm drainage is gonna be, handled adequately or something. I'd have to go back and look at the exact criteria. I can look at it. Give me just a second. 2 seconds here. Let's see. It's 3.4 or something. So there's 3.4.3, which says, let's do it. Let's see, that's sanitary sewer. 3.4.4. It says effect on downstream drainage. Where it is anticipated by the town engineer that additional runoff resulting from development will overload the existing facility, which we don't really think that's the case. The town shall withhold approval of development. That's really not what we have here, so that's not really the issue. And then there's just a general provision in 3.4.408 that says the town shall issue a development permit only where adequate provisions for storm water and flood water runoff have been made. And then it references chapter 3.5, surface water management, but the town has never adopted any code provisions. So that's where I'm saying it's kind of a gray area, and so anticipating this, what I suggested, and I'm not saying we should do this, it's just what I came up with for a condition of approval to address that issue. Was, let's see. What page is the staff report on in the packet, Don?
Page 5, I think. It's on page 5 on mine. $20, $25.
or this one, 25. Jay,
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yes, it was.
There we go. Yeah, so the condition of approval that sort of I came up with to deal with that, and it sort of the intro to it is the planning commission should, decision should expressly impose condition 11 or not. If required by the planning commission, the landscape plan shall depict the planting plan for stormwater detention and water quality treatment area capable of detaining and treating stormwater to the pre-development condition for the 5-year storm event. Based upon what I've heard, I think it would be really hard to do that for the building, the way they're doing the building. So I would probably recommend, if you're gonna do something, I would do that only for the parking lot, because they are taking the essentially the pipe from the building straight to G, and there's really nowhere to put it there. So I would make that specific to the parking lot drainage. But that would be a way to deal with it. I think kind of in the area that Daryl was pointing to, you know, they can deal with that type of condition pretty easily.
So
I apologize, I'm trying to keep, I was a little confused about what, so it feels like we are meeting code, but there's a little bit of a gray area, and you were suggesting we did something that was above and beyond, but then I got confused what you're asking, so I apologize. Can you say it again? I couldn't keep up with you, sorry.
Yes, I was saying you would have a condition that the final landscape plan shall depict planning plan and stormwater detention and water quality treatment capable of detaining and treating stormwater to the pre-development condition for the 5-year storm event. And then I would add for the parking lot water or parking lot runoff, not the building runoff. The way you're doing it, you're taking the foundation or the roof drain out to G Street. So that's splitting the water. That's actually helpful. We want to, I think, encourage that given the circumstances.
So are you asking us to take all of the runoff from the parking lot and run that into a landscape area that cleans it and then puts it, and then lets it go to the street?
Exactly. Yep.
The area, the landscape. So,
Daryl,
yes,
do they ever put drains in the parking lot?
it's just, yeah, they can put a drain in the parking lot, but the water that goes into the drain underground has to then drain to the street.
Into the,
But, so if you imagine putting a drain pipe underground to get it to the street, it has to go uphill and it doesn't work.
So if you put it in the middle of the parking lot, right in the storm drain.
Right.
that's what I was thinking, is put a drain in the parking lot and then have it run into the storm drain. I mean, that's what most parking lots have.
You don't have to send it uphill, you can send it downhill.
well, we don't have a lot of grade here to work with getting under the walk to the storm drain.
Okay,
Gutter, I mean, there's
a little bit.
not very much there.
Okay.
So it would be, if we sag we have to keep the parking lot. Can you go back to that one? Dawn,
which one?
when you had a, so you drop off, when you come off of G, it drops off very steeply. So, you know, if you make it drop off too much, you can't get over the approach hump. So if we drop it too much down on H and slope it backwards to the east, then we also have a bump at that approach. So we'd have to pick up the drainage somewhere along the line where should have brought a pointer back about 25, 50 feet from the approach. and run it into a little swale up where that hatched area is, we could do that.
Yeah, I know. What Daryl's describing is what I saw that looked physically feasible, but understand, I'm not advocating this be done because the code is pretty murky. It's really for the planning commission of, do you want to impose that or not? And if you're fine just sending the parking lot water onto the street, I mean, it's eventually gonna make it there anyways, and frankly, I don't know, I haven't lived in Lakeview, but I've lived in mountain towns before, and I understand snow and what happens to snow when it rains, and so probably when you have your flooding instances or instances where there's water, is it gonna make that much difference? Probably not. So, I mean, if the commission's like, yeah, we don't really care, I think that's fine too. I mean, I think probably the instances when you're gonna have drainage issues, having what would help with, I can tell you is in a thunderstorm and stuff, that's when having something like that
Well, we
would make
do
a little
have
bit of difference.
One thing I
In
didn't
the
know,
winter, probably not.
one thing I didn't know is we do have a trench drain across the sidewalk, across the approach before it drops onto H Street. So the water does not run across the sidewalk.
That's good.
I feel better knowing that.
Yeah,
How much water is that French drain can handle though? Will it handle that runoff that's there? Or that, it's coming off the building, right? That's what we were talking about.
Coming off the parking lot.
Off the parking lot.
Yeah,
The building goes to H Street, the parking lot goes to H. So there's about 30,000 square feet. So 5-year storm. Intensity of 1 inch an hour.
Not much.
What's that? Figure it out. But that's what it is.
I lived in Houston.
Well,
Nothing.
yeah, it used to be like- So that will be in there. So if that'll work, that's fine. If not, we'll work something up on the landscape. But I don't think we need to.
I had one more question.
All right, good.
Back to the trucks.
Mhm.
On your drawing, is that the largest vehicle that will come in there?
Yes,
And they
typically,
will enter and exit from either side
they'll enter and exit from G Street.
from G.
And we put a truck, we put the largest truck that they use on the plan,
Right.
and it fits.
Close.
It fits, I mean,
I just wondered if you
with cars parked on both sides of the street, you can make the turn. I mean, it's probably not the truck driver's favorite thing to do that day, but I mean, it's
but if you got a few
physically
feet
fits.
from the sidewalk in, they'd have more room, wouldn't they?
If what?
If you had more room inside, once they turn into the lot.
Sure. Yeah, I mean,
I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah.
No, the arc is such that if you cut a little bit off each side, you have more room to turn.
Right.
But I don't think this, I just wanna make sure you're using the
Yeah.
biggest truck.
Yeah.
Like, especially given the width of the curb cuts and the driveways they've called out. Like, I drove truck for a while. I'm not dreadfully concerned about
So
that.
did I.
Like I said, there's times where, yeah, we get cars parked both sides. Yeah, it can get-
I drove in the Army, we didn't really care if there were cars parked there.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't mind severity, we were supposed to care, so. But yeah,
Thank you.
Okay, Jay, under your staff recommendations on number 5,
Yes. So staff recommended conditions of approval are on pages 28 and 29 of the packet.
right,
And then, if the planning commission approves it, then, staff would ask that you either include condition 11, as, recommended to be modified for the parking lot water or not. But the applicant didn't have any objections to conditions 1 through 10, so we would recommend those be imposed.
okay, so most of these conditions have already been discussed with. Do we have any further questions from my commission?
I have one. We have to impose condition 11. I'm sorry. We have to impose condition 11 or not impose it. Right? One or the other.
Yeah, it's like staff is recommending, it has discussed the first 10 with them already. Number 11 is the only one that's still, because that's a real gray area in our code. It's not,
I'm learning.
maybe something for our commissioners to bring up and clarify. Do you have any further questions for the applicant? Okay, hearing no further questions, I'm going to close the hearing at this point for commission deliberation. Okay,
I don't think there's any issue. Every parking lot in this town drains into the street. Dollar General, that parking lot is probably the worst one, and it puddles just off the highway. So if it's slanted, it's gonna drain off into the road, run down the side. It's no different than Safeway, it's no different than anything we already have.
I've never really seen an issue in all the years I've lived here on that side of town. Our problems have always been right here in the center of town. The outskirts, I mean, I live right next to a creek, and very rarely do we even flow over, even when this is flooding. It barely even goes up the street down there, so, we're at the mouth of the canyon. So, honestly, I don't see any problem at all with needing extra storm drains or anything added on down there for that.
If you wanna slip and slide, just go to Safeway.
Exactly.
Let's go. I'm good. I asked him.
that's good. That's what we want. And you guys have been around a little longer than I have. My experience with the different flooding issue we had here 3 years ago, it seemed like it basically ran straight down Center Street and then off on the East Street. Enough to get me concerned.
So the issue is right down Center Street, used to run straight down all the way to the end.
And that's only been really concerned, well, we put the dam in years ago. But it's pretty much done its job up until then.
Yeah.
That was like the flooding issues. Once they got the drainages cleared out, it was, a matter of moments, and then it was good. Once they got the equipment cleaning everything out, everything settled right down in an instant, so.
we've done what we can as a town.
And it seemed like it hit fast and then
Exactly, and there's no other issues, and it's never went off north or south here really for any problems. Not enough to be concerned about.
and you're back. Protecting the other residents of the town. That's
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
kind of what we're here for, so. Well. Are we at the point where somebody's ready to bring me a motion? And we need to address the staff recommendations in that, including specifically number 11. If required by the planning commission, final landscape plan shall depict planting plan for stormwater detention and water quality treatment. Area capable of detaining and treating stormwater to the pre-development conditions of the 5-year event. The rest of the conditions, it sounds like been addressed. That's the only one that's still a question that needs to be part of this motion.
A motion passed with it being as it is, I don't feel there's a need for extra, so without extra storm.
Make sure I understand that. You're moving to approve 772, I believe this one is.
Correct.
Without staff recommendation item number 11.
Correct.
Does that sound like it covers what we need, Jay?
Oh yeah, that's fine. Like I said, it's for the planning commission to decide what you want to do with that. So if that's the will of the commission, then it's fine by me.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that the motion as stated is going to cover what we need then.
Yep, yeah, just with condition 1 through 10 is how I understand the motion. Is that correct?
Okay.
I second.
Okay. Moved and seconded to approve planning commission application number 772. That's what I thought. Don't always trust my own memory for that long. 772. With staff recommendation items 1 through 10, but not requiring item 11. Okay. Don, if you'd like to call the roll.
Dennis Mooney,
Yay.
Greg McCauley.
Yay.
Tom Dowdy,
Okay.
Bonnie Lehman. Kevin Sims.
Yay.
Ronald.
Motion passes.
Are you a tough man?
I'm a very good cook.
Sorry.
It's painful.
Oh my gosh.
My
They're playing tonight, I'm sure.
I understand. My wife is a bartender. She works right outside of Lakeview, and I have season tickets. I'm down there probably more often than I should be.
No, it's a good place to hang out.
It's a great
We
place.
was, the only time I've been there, we went, is it Waverly? Back to Lakeview?
Yeah.
Robert, you have one more down.
Oh,
Sorry.
Okay. And has everybody read the minutes from last month's meeting? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion we approve the minutes.
Okay,
That's
moved.
second.
I'll second it.
Second. And we don't strictly need to go roll call on this, do we, Jay? Didn't think so.
No, voice vote.
Voice vote. Voice vote minutes, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passed.
Meeting's over.
And,
Gotta close it.
okay. All right. Meeting of the Town of Lakeview Planning Commission is adjourned at 7:45 PM.